Yesterday, we talked about solving quadratic equations, and there were some special quadratics where it was either a difference of squares or a perfect binomial square. We looked at four problems found on this worksheet, H23, and we worked A and B and 8 and 9. So we did that yesterday on Tuesday, and you'll find that in Tuesday's notes and on Tuesday's video. Today, we want to look at one other example. Problem number 10 here says this: we want to write the given information and manipulate it into a familiar form. That should sound really familiar. That is and has been the standard we've been working on, rewriting expressions to help us solve equations, solve problems. So we want to solve the equation, answer this question about this situation. Thought this was kind of a cool situation personally. Here's what I thought. If you read the problem, it says this. It says a volleyball player sets the ball in the air and the height of the ball after t seconds is given in feet by this formula: h equals negative 16t squared plus 12t plus 6. Now, we've been looking at very similar formulas, and given the initial velocity and that information, actually quite a bit of information is already taken care of in this formula. We can actually look at it and inspect it, and this constant of 6 means that the ball was set at a height of 6 feet. All right, but that's not what the question's asking us, okay? So a teammate wants to wait until the ball is 8 feet in the air before she spikes it. So when should the teammate spike the ball? How many reasonable solutions are there in this problem? So one of the things I want to point out to you, and I've been asked a few times over the years with a word problem like this, how is it you break it apart? Well, first of all, the first thing I want to do is write down the formula, which I've done already. And I'm also going to write down what T represents and even what H represents. But what I really want to know is, what is it asking me to find out? And here it is. It says, when should the teammate spike the ball? So the question is, when should the ball be spiked? Now, we want to spike it at 8 feet. So I could probably word that question a little bit differently. I could probably word the question this way: when will the ball be at a height or an h of 8? When will the ball be at a height of 8 feet? Now remember, here's the formula. T equals time. H is the height of the ball. I drew a very artistic diagram of what is happening here. Here's my volleyball net. All right, and then an awesome drawing. And here she is spiking it. So remember, when you spike it, you just create this really pretty parabola. And so we mentioned to you, she hit it at 6 feet. So what we really kind of want to know is, when is it 8 feet so that person can spike it? And just looking at that curve, looks like there might be a couple of opportunities to spike it. So I'm going to take this value that I want to know when it is that h is equal to 8, and I'm going to plug that in for h. So 8 equals a negative 16t squared plus 12t plus 6. What I want to do then is solve that quadratic equation using everything I know. Well, I know my first step then is to set it equal to 0. I know that's step number 1. And so I really need to move the 8 to the other side of the equation. I can do so by subtracting 8 from both sides. And I want to rewrite that equation as 0 equals negative 16t squared plus 12t, and then negative 8 and a positive 6 would be minus 2. Next thing I want to determine, and always before I factor, I want to see, is there a greatest common factor? Well, looking at this, when I see there's a 16, 12, and a 2, 2 is the smallest number, and these are all even, so it looks to me like the GCF would be 2. Not to mention, also, I have a leading negative, and I don't want that, so I'm going to write the GCF as -2. So I'm going to write the GCF out in front and factor it out. So 0 will equal a -2 times 8t squared, because -2 times 8 is -16. A -2 times a -6 will give me a +12. And then a -2 times a +1 will give me a -2. Now, there's lots of different ways to factor, but remember, in a situation like this where there's a coefficient in front of t squared and that coefficient is greater than 1, it's 8. Slide and divide is probably going to work the best. And so I'll multiply 8 times 1. So it's going to look like this. I'm going to move the 0 to the right side just to kind of clean things up a little bit. And I'll rewrite this as t squared minus 6t plus 8. So remember what I don't need to do to factor this, okay? We'll look at 8, and I want to know what factors will multiply to be 8, but will add together to be a -6. Now, in order for me to multiply and get a positive number, but to take those two factors and add them and get a negative answer, that means both of them have to be negative. Well, factors of a +8 could be a -1 and a -8. But when I add those two, I get -9, so that's probably not what I'm looking for. Or a -2 and -4. When I add those two, I get a -6. So that looks like the answer I'm looking for. So this will factor this way. It'll be t minus 2 times t minus 4. And that equals 0. Remember, I multiplied by 8, so got to divide by 8 as well in my second terms of the binomials. All right, so let's reduce that fraction. It'll be -2 times t minus 1/4 and t minus 1/2, because 2/8 becomes 1/4, 4/8 becomes 1/2. That equals 0. We need to get rid of the fraction, so we get -2 is equal to multiply through by 4. So it'll be 4t minus 1 and 2t minus 1 equals 0. All I did was multiply by 4 here. I got 4t and canceled out the denominator. 2 here, 2t. Cancel the denominator out there as well. Kind of an easy maneuver. So to solve it, remember my last step after I factor it. Okay, remember my third step was to actually factor. Okay, and so now I've got it factored. So I'm going to set the factors equal to 0. That's my last step. Well, I can set -2 equal to 0, but -2 is never equal to 0, so that doesn't make any sense, so don't worry about that. That's not an answer. 4t minus 1, we'll set that equal to 0. And 2t minus 1, set that equal to 0 as well. Add 1 to both sides. So I'll get 4t is equal to 1. Divide by 4. T is equal to 1/4. Same kind of deal here. Add 1 to both sides. So 2t be equal to 1. Divide by 2. T is going to be equal to 1/2. So what I found is this, that she will want to spike the ball at 1/2 second and 1/4 second. So 1/4 of a second and 1/2 of a second, because from the moment it's set, 1/4 of a second later, it's 8 feet in the air. It goes up, it starts to come back down. At a half a second, it's on its way back down. It's at 8 feet in the air. So that's the answer I'm looking for. And so it kind of makes sense. Not only did we figure that out graphically, we figured it out too when we kind of drew a little graph that it would go up and then come back down. So we can use factoring to solve quadratic equations.